Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Reflected, a ham radio operator's miscellany. My name is Alan, and hopefully, we're going to have a bit more of a positive episode this time. So, this is episode number 5, entitled Imposter Syndrome and the Impossible Radio. So, I'll start off with saying I suffer with imposter syndrome all the time. I mean, all the time. So, for those of you who don't know what imposter syndrome is, imposter syndrome is defined as the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. So, what does that mean? It means that even though in reality you are extremely skilled or extremely good at what you do, and you're very successful with that, you don't believe you deserve it. Or I guess a better way to put it would be, is just kind of to describe how I feel all the time. It's like, what right do I have to be in the RF industry, right? I mean, what do I have to contribute to it? I'm just an amateur. That kind of stuff. And that kind of goes hand in hand with, my ASD and, my anxiety and my depression. All these things kind of feed off each other, okay, to make this just, that much worse, right? But like I said, this is going to be a more positive episode, so I don't want to bring it down with that kind of stuff. But my point is, how do you, if you are suffering from this, what can you do to deal with this? The first thing we need to understand is that we're not alone. Okay, anyone, and I mean anyone, who is in any sort of industry, makerspace, whether you're into computer sciences or just, maybe you just like coding Arduinos as a hobby. You're into amateur radio. You're into electronics. 3D printing. Whatever it is, it can go from that, all the way up into the professional realm, into the RF industry, into electronics design, like I was saying, computer sciences, computer programming. It can get all the way up into those kind of areas. You can be very good at that, very technically good at that, but feel like that you're undeserving, like nothing you did got you there, like you're only there because of luck and circumstance or something like that. So first and foremost, remember you're not alone. Okay, I go through it. You're going through it. Anybody in these spaces goes through it at one point or another, and it's going to be a continuous thing. Even Adam Savage goes through it. Now, he's got a whole video dedicated to talking about imposter syndrome. You're going to have those moments where you're sitting there working on a project, and it just almost feels overwhelming. Like, what am I even doing here? Why am I putting all this effort into something that I've got no business doing? There's other people who are way more experienced than I am. I'm going to put this thing out into the world, and I'm going to get mocked by it because it's it's simplicity or something like that. Okay. The absolute first thing we need to realize is that we are not alone. There's no shame in admitting that you suffer from this, okay? So, we've talked about the very first step, right? About admitting that we're not alone, right? Or accepting that we're not alone. So what do you do from there? Well, one thing you got to be very careful about is going to forums, okay? And I think I've talked about this in other videos, but going to web forums. Let's say, for example, you're working on a electronics project. I can scratch it. Let's say you're working on a two-way radio project, okay, and you're trying to program your radio. And I'm going to use myself as an example because this ties into the impossible radio, right? So let's say you're having an issue programming this radio. So you do, you do what anyone else is going to do. And I mean anybody else. Doesn't matter what, how professional you think you are, you're still going to be doing this. You're going to go to the internet. You're going to bring up Google. and you're going to type in your problem, see if anybody else has dealt with this, right? That's a perfectly acceptable thing to do, right? You're going to do your homework on it, all right? You've already exhausted the avenues that you already know of. You know, you have your manufacturer documentation that you've already gone through, which hasn't helped. You've got your years of experience that you're leaning on that hasn't got you out of this mess yet. And even if you're new, let's say you are new and you don't have that much experience, okay? You're gonna Google it, and you're gonna see all these forums that get listed, okay? The best thing you can do there is to view and read only, okay? If you cannot find the issue that you were dealing with in a forum, you really need to pick and choose what forum you're going to interact with, because let me tell you, the vast majority of forums that you're going to run into out there are going to react negatively to newcomers, okay? Not all. Be perfectly clear about that. Not all will do this. But from what I have found, unfortunately, it's a vast majority of them. So you're going to go in there as a new person. You know, you're going to sign up, you're going to create your account, and you're going to ask your question, and you're going to be extremely respectful about it. You know, you're going to say, I'm no expert in this area. I'm just starting out. I'm having this problem. You know, can somebody help me with this? Most of the time, what you're going to get is, well, we're not going to hold your hand with this. We don't. It's just another person wanting to be spoon-fed. So, like I said, pick and choose your forums carefully to kind of avoid that stuff. Keep in mind, if you're already mentally predisposed to that kind of stuff affecting you in negative ways, you really need to stay away from that. If your personality can handle that kind of stuff, you know, that's fine. You can dig into it. But at least in my case, I just stay away from that, right? So in that case, what do you do if you can't turn to web forums to get an answer to your question, right? Well, I don't know if you can hear the train going by now. So there's things you can do, right? Let's say you're working on in my case, I was working with a Motorola radio, and this is something I wish I would have done right out of the gate, because, you know, you just send an email to Motorola for your tech support stuff. I mean, you got to have a Motorola account and stuff like that, but, you know, that's beside the point. So you sent an email to Motorola explaining my situation, and as it turns out, the problem I was having is a known issue that Motorola just never bothered to resolve, right? There was a feature in this radio that was completely inaccessible through software, but through some glitch when updating the firmware, it activated this feature. But since you couldn't interact with that feature through the programming software, there was no way to configure it. You know, so I was getting some weird interactions, some weird symptoms with this radio. So my only option was to roll back the firmware, right? And during my troubleshooting process, I had already done it. I had already rolled the firmware back, and, you know, that resolved the issue. But I wanted to know if I was doing anything wrong that was causing that, right? When I updated the firmware, did I do it correctly? Did I not do it correctly? Did something I do cause this issue? Okay. Well, what I found out later on was from Motorola. I was like, no, I didn't do anything wrong. This is a known issue. But since it's an older model radio, they just never bothered to fix it, because, you know, they've moved on to the APX series radio, etc. So it was just one of those things, you have to live with it. So you roll back the firmware, and then you re-upload the new firmware, and it works. So it was just a weird glitch that happened during updating firmware that caused this feature to get activated, and with no way to interact with it. So it ended up being one of those weird problems that had an extremely simple solution that I had already found. But since dealing with that imposter syndrome, it's like, you know, that can't be the answer, right? You know, I came up with it, so that can't be right. You go to the web forums and it's full of negativity, so you just, well, whatever, there's no help there. So it must have been something I did. Well, come to find out that It's nothing I did. It's something that Motorola did, right? So never discount your own skill, right? Everybody, and I mean everybody, starts from zero. You're not born with this innate knowledge, right? You're not born with the ability to program radios. You're not born with the ability to build antennas, right? You have to learn this stuff. Everybody has to learn this stuff. So never, ever feel ashamed or embarrassed because you don't know something, all right? Because you're never going to know everything. And it's okay. It's okay to not know. You know, what did I say in the last episode? The first step, the step one in the pursuit of wisdom is admitting that you don't know, right? So, and there's a lot of things that I don't know. So, it's just a huge thing to keep in mind, right? So, we've talked about what imposter syndrome is. We've kind of talked about how to deal with it, right? Not thinking less of yourself, not discounting your own abilities. There's that saying out there that says, well, if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? That actually applies in this case, right? If this were easy, everybody would do it. How many people, like, let's say you go to a big box store, right? Where there's lots of people. How many people, let's say there's 500 people in that building. Out of those 500 people, how many of them do you think would know the difference between a dipole antenna or a beam antenna? How many of them do you think would know the difference between VHF and UHF? I would bet less than 5%. Probably less than that. You know, 5% is being a bit generous. Let's go with maybe 1%. Okay. Out of those 500 people, maybe 3 people are going to know what the difference is, right? So, thinking of it like that will keep things in perspective for you, okay? Things that we do, while we may think that they're a hobby, are not easy, right? They're not trivial. They're things that the vast majority of the population on the planet can't do or have no concept of, right? They're so used to getting in their vehicle and turning their radio on and hearing the local traffic report. They give no consideration to how that happens. They have no consideration for how the world works around them, okay? You and I, the type of person that gets into this kind of stuff, our brains just work differently, right? We have to be constantly learning. We have to be understanding the world around us. I myself am constantly having to learn, right? It doesn't matter how simple or simplistic the thing seems to be that I'm looking at. I need to understand what's going on. So keep that kind of stuff in mind, right? You really are a unique individual when it comes to this, right? You're doing things that most people don't understand, and to them, in some ways, probably seems like magic, right? It may seem mundane to you, but to them, it's like magic. So, I mean, just think about it. You have the ability to come in here and turn your HF radio on and talk to somebody literally on the other side of the planet, right? Or talk to somebody on the International Space Station, right? How many times have you seen a video where someone sees that happen for the first time who doesn't know anything about amateur radio and is just blown away that you can do that? So don't ever think that the things that you do or the skills that you have are somehow mediocre or not as impressive as some other stuff. Sure, I freely admit that there are a huge number, and I mean a huge number of people who are way more intelligent than I'm ever going to be, right? I don't understand how fission works, for example. I have a very low level, a very basic understanding of fission, right? But I'm certainly not going to be building a reactor anytime soon, okay? I understand. I I enjoy learning about manned space flight. Does that mean I know how to build a rocket? No, it doesn't. Um, but that just means I have an immense respect for the people that do know how to build a rocket. I have a drive to learn more about how you build a rocket. I'm not saying I'm ever going to build a rocket. Like I said, it's how my mind works. I always want to learn new things. I love taking in knowledge, and there's nothing wrong with that. I am not ashamed to admit that I love learning new and esoteric things like that, okay? Neither should you. So, I guess I should bring this one to a point. This is going to be a bit of a shorter one, right? We're only at 15 minutes. But I think with this one, there's no need to really ramble on with this, right? Imposter syndrome, okay? Sometimes it sneaks up on you. Sometimes you don't realize it's happening. Sometimes it's just that feeling like, oh, I don't really want to go. I don't want to go into the shack and work on that project today, you know. And it's not that exciting. Sometimes it sneaks up on you like that, you know. But we gotta fight that, you know. What we do, the stuff that we do, really is unique and exciting. So I know it can be hard to ignore the negativity out there, because it comes from all angles. It really does, and it can carry a lot of weight if it comes from someone personal that you know personally. You know, maybe a loved one, maybe even a family member. It can really hurt when those type of people dismiss what you do as being simplistic or whatever, but it's not. Right? That says more about them than what it says about you. When someone dismisses what we do as simplistic, or esoteric, or weird, or nerdy, or geeky, that says more about them than it does of us. You know, that just means that they're too lazy to put any effort into understanding what it is we do. They're too lazy to learn anything new. They're perfectly happy plodding through life, perfectly happy with the idea that everything around them is magic, and they're just accepting their lot in life, right? So, I mean, it is what it is. It's sad that it's got to be like that, but like I said, it is what it is. So as hard as it may seem to move past that kind of negativity, believe me, you can do it, right? There was a time in my life where I thought I would never get around that kind of negativity, but you can. I did it. It wasn't easy. It really wasn't easy. Okay. Sometimes you have to pursue professional help. You know, like I said, having ASD and depression and stuff. Sometimes you really do have to consult professional help. There's no shame in that, right? Zero shame in that. So, I guess let's bring it all to a singular point here. And that singular point is this: do what you love, right? Do what you love, and do not be ashamed or embarrassed about it. It does not matter what other people think. It never has, and it never will. Okay. Other people's opinions are meaningless, right? Sure, your loved ones, the people close to you, their opinions matter to you, right? It's always great to hear when a loved one compliments something you've done, or something that you've built or constructed that you've given as a gift is appreciated. Believe me, because this has happened to me. When you build something with your own two hands and you give it as a gift, and the person you're giving it to rejects it and they don't want it, that hurts. That is a whole new level of pain right there, right? But you will come back from that, right? It just takes time, okay? So, remain strong. Never feel like you're alone. You know, if you need someone to talk to, feel free to leave a comment. You know, drop me an email, whatever. You know, I'm happy to talk to. So, never feel like you're alone. Avoid the negativity wherever possible. You know, stay off the forums. You know, do your own research when you run into an issue. Never assume that because you can't figure this issue out, or let me put it this way: never assume because you ran into an issue and you solved it so easily means it's it's done. You did it wrong, right? That might have been the actual solution, as I found out with Motorola. Never assume just because you can't figure out an issue, you can't solve an issue, it's because you're not intelligent enough, right? Maybe the issue you're solving is the first, or the issue you're facing is the first time that issue's ever been faced. And like I said, it could be as simple as you don't know what you don't know. You're facing this for the first time, and you can't figure out. It's because you never experienced this before, right? So, over time, you're going to build that toolkit of experience and having manufacturer documentation and learning how to use Google effectively while simultaneously not really relying on forums, because forums can get you in a whole lot of trouble because sometimes people just post things on forums that have no basis in reality, right? So, excuse me. I don't want to ramble with this one. I feel like this wasn't. I hope it just didn't come across as negative, right? Because it certainly did not. It wasn't my intention for this to be negative. My intention here is to reaffirm the fact that we're not in this alone. Imposter syndrome is real. Everybody deals with it. Okay. So never be ashamed about that. So get out there, do what you love, have fun at it. Don't worry about what other people think. All right. Doesn't matter. Just have fun with it. Hoist that geek flag or the nerd flag or the freak flag, whatever you want to call it. Hoist it high. Doesn't matter. No one's opinion matters except your own. So, with that, I think it's time for me to go again. It's slowly starting to warm up outside. I think it's warm enough I might get the snowplow out and scrape some slush off my driveway. I know that sounds exciting, and it is. So it's especially exciting because, living up here in the northeastern corner of North Dakota, we have 26 months of winter. So whenever we get a nice warm day, I like to take advantage of it. So with that, I hope you're having a fantastic day. If not, I hope it's going a little bit better now. And remember, be kind, because everyone's fighting a battle that you don't know anything about. And life is too short. So, this is Alan, N0ZFG, out.